I should have stopped. I didn't. Now every photo is a mirror. And all I see is shame. I ruined him. I ruined myself. And I can't undo it. I never thought a birthday retreat could change how I saw myself. I never imagined that letting someone see me, really see me, would unravel everything I thought I'd buried. My name's Vanessa Moore. I'm 45, divorced, and somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling like a woman. I became the ex. The quiet one. The stepmom who stayed. I don't know when exactly it happened. Maybe it was after my husband left and handed off his son like a box of unwanted responsibility. Maybe it was when I stopped looking in mirrors because the woman staring back didn't feel like me anymore. It's been almost 4 years since the divorce. Logan, my stepson, is still living with me. He's 21 now, a photography major, always polite, quiet, distant. We coexist. Mostly, he calls me Vanessa, never Mom, which I'm grateful for. That word would feel too heavy on his tongue and too misplaced on mine. When he offered to take me away for the weekend, just a small birthday retreat, somewhere peaceful, he said, I thought he was being sweet. Thought maybe he just wanted to repay the years I stayed when his father didn't. So I said yes. We drove up to a remote homestay in the Adirondacks. Snow blanketed everything, like the world had been reset. The air was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like it's watching you. I remember thinking, this is the kind of place where nothing bad can happen. But now, as I sit here trying to explain it all, I realize something did happen. Not loud, not cruel, but quiet, gentle, disarming. And once it started, I couldn't stop it. Because maybe, a part of me didn't want to. After the divorce, life didn't explode, it just faded. No screaming matches, no court battles, just quiet. Paul handed me the keys, the bills, and Logan said he needed space to start over. Funny how starting over for him meant disappearing. And for me, it meant staying behind to pick up what he left. Logan was 17 then, tall, withdrawn, polite to a fault. He never lashed out or acted like I ruined anything. But that almost made it worse. The silence between us wasn't angry, it was polite, detached, and full of things neither of us dared to say. He called me Vanessa from the start. Not Mom, not even Miss, just Vanessa, and I accepted it. I didn't want to force a label onto a boy who didn't ask to stay. I kept the house clean, paid the bills, did everything I was supposed to. But nothing in that house ever felt like mine. Not the furniture Paul picked. Not the photos Logan never touched. Not even my own reflection in the mirror. I told myself this was what strength looked like, showing up. Holding on, staying silent. But the truth? I wasn't strong. I was invisible. And I was getting used to it. Living with Logan was like living with a shadow. He was there, always, but just out of reach. He kept to his room most days. Headphones on, editing photos late into the night. I'd hear the click of his mouse, the low hum of his speakers, the occasional creak of the floorboards when he moved across the hallway. But we barely spoke. Meals were quiet. We sat at opposite ends of the dining table like distant relatives at a funeral. I'd ask about his classes. He'd nod, maybe offer a good or fine, then back to silence. Still, there were moments, small ones, a mug left out with a tea bag already in it, his way of reminding me he noticed I liked chamomile at night. A folded blanket left neatly on the couch after I'd fallen asleep there again. He never said anything, but I saw those gestures. I felt them. And then there were the looks. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me, not in a strange way. Not at first, but curiously. Like I was something he couldn't quite name. A living thing in a museum. I chalked it up to boredom. Or habit. Maybe I'd become part of the background. Like the old bookshelf or the dusty piano. So when he offered to take me away for a weekend, just you and me. For your birthday, I was stunned. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt chosen. And I said yes. We left early on a Friday morning. The roads were still quiet, blanketed in fresh snow from the night before. Logan drove with one hand on the wheel, the other cradling a thermos of coffee. He didn't talk much, but I didn't mind. The silence between us felt different, less hollow, more intentional. The homestay was nestled deep in the Adirondacks. A cedar-sided cabin with a wraparound porch and tall windows that looked out onto a frozen lake. The air was sharp, but the stillness of the place softened everything. It felt like time had paused for us. Inside, the cabin was warm, rustic, but elegant. A stone fireplace, plaid blankets, soft yellow lighting that made even the coldest corners feel safe. Logan carried our bags inside, then disappeared into the back room, saying he had a small surprise. I walked through the space, my fingers brushing over worn books, a framed map, a vintage camera on the shelf. It was the kind of place that begged you to slow down, breathe, and forget the world outside. When Logan returned, he handed me a small wrapped box. "Happy late birthday," he said. I blinked, surprised. I hadn't expected anything. Inside was a satin robe, deep burgundy, soft as a whisper. "I thought it would look beautiful on you," he said, "if you'd be okay with letting me photograph you sometime this weekend. Just for fun, for art." I laughed nervously. "Me? Logan, I'm not exactly camera material." His smile didn't falter. "You'd be surprised." And the way he looked at me in that moment, like I was something luminous, I forgot to doubt myself. I just said, "Okay." The next afternoon, the light filtered in through the tall windows like a hush. Snow kept falling outside, but the cabin felt wrapped in warmth and wood smoke. I'd made tea and was reading by the fire when Logan stepped out from the back room, camera in hand. "You up for it?" he asked, eyes gentle but certain. I nodded. Something about the way he asked, soft, unpressured, made it easy to say yes. I went upstairs and slipped into the robe. The fabric kissed my skin. I paused at the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. Tired eyes, soft lines, but something else, something awake. When I came down, Logan had rearranged the living room, moved the armchair, pulled the curtains to let the light paint the space in amber. There was no flash, no tripod, just him, holding the camera like it was part of him. He didn't pose me, he didn't need to. "Just be," he said. So I sat by the window, curled my legs beneath me, sipped tea, let the robe fall slightly off my shoulder. He clicked the shutter slowly, respectfully, deliberately. I started to forget he was my stepson, not because I saw him as something else, but because in that moment, he wasn't Logan. He was the only person who'd looked at me like I was worth capturing. "You're radiant," he said, almost to himself. I felt something stir, confusing, warm, electric. I looked at him. "Why are you doing this?" I asked quietly. He didn't blink. "Because you've been invisible for too long. Someone should remind you how beautiful you are." Something in me cracked open. I didn't stop him from taking more photos. And I didn't stop myself from wanting him to. That evening, the snow thickened, the world outside vanished behind a wall of white, and the cabin seemed to shrink, folding us into its quiet center. Logan lit the fireplace and played soft instrumental music, low piano notes that melted into the crackling wood. I had changed into warmer clothes, but the robe still hung loosely around me, more like a comfort than an outfit. Logan sat across from me on the floor, sorting through the photos on his camera. His face was unreadable, but every so often, he'd glance up at me like he was seeing something he couldn't unsee. "Would you like to see them?" he asked. I hesitated, then nodded. He scooted closer and held the screen between us. The images made my breath catch. They weren't just pictures, they were fragments of something more intimate. A soft smile I didn't know I had. A curve of shoulder lit like poetry. A gaze I didn't remember giving. "I don't look like this," I whispered. "You do," he said. "You just forgot." There was a long pause. The fire popped. The music drifted. My hand brushed his when I reached for the camera, and neither of us pulled away. The air shifted. I felt it in my chest first, a tight flutter. Like a door creaking open. His eyes searched mine, not in lust, but in longing, a desperate, aching need to connect, to be seen. When he leaned in, he didn't touch me, just waited. And the strangest thing? I didn't move away. Because in that moment, I wasn't his stepmother. I was a woman who wanted to be wanted. And for the first time in years, I felt like someone truly did. I woke before the sun. The fire had died down, leaving only a faint glow in the hearth. The cabin was quiet, too quiet, and for a second I wasn't sure if what happened last night had actually happened. My body felt different, not sore, just aware. Like every inch of me had been reawakened. I wrapped myself in a throw blanket and stepped into the kitchen. The kettle was cold, no sound from upstairs, no Logan. The night before kept replaying in fragments. The closeness, his breath on my neck, the way his hand had hovered near my cheek like he was asking permission without words. And how I hadn't stopped him, how I'd leaned in too. But we hadn't crossed that line, not entirely. Still, something had shifted, a line had blurred, maybe broken, and there was no pretending we hadn't both felt it. I poured myself a glass of water. But my hand trembled, shame crept in, slow and biting. I wasn't supposed to feel that way. Not with him, not ever. Upstairs, I heard his door creak open. Footsteps padded down the hallway. Hesitant. When Logan appeared, he looked like he hadn't slept either. His hair was a mess. Eyes red-rimmed but steady. "Hey," he said softly. I nodded. "Hey." The silence stretched. Then, about last night. I held up a hand. I know, it was a lot. He looked down, then met my gaze again. "I didn't mean to confuse you. Or make you uncomfortable. I meant it, everything I said." "I know," I whispered. I did know, and that was the hardest part. Because nothing he said was wrong. He hadn't touched me with cruelty or manipulation. He touched me with tenderness, reverence. But it didn't make it easier to live with. "I need some air," I said, slipping on my coat. He didn't stop me, just stood there in the doorway, watching me walk into the snow. Outside, the cold was sharp enough to sting. I walked past the edge of the porch, letting my boots sink into the untouched snow. The trees stood like frozen sentinels, branches heavy with silence. I needed the cold. I needed to feel something clear, something that didn't confuse me. My breath came out in clouds, shaky and fast. Inside, Logan was still standing where I left him. I could feel it, that weight between us, not angry, not ashamed, just heavy with everything we weren't supposed to say out loud. What scared me most wasn't what had happened. It was how I'd felt. Wanted, seen, safe, but also alive. It had been so long since anyone looked at me like that, not out of obligation or politeness, but out of awe, like I mattered, like I was still capable of stirring something in someone. But he was my stepson. That word hit me like a slap. Still, I remembered his voice. "You've been invisible for too long." And the worst part? He was right. I had disappeared into a role. Into silence. Into survival. And now I didn't know how to come back without him. I stood there for what felt like hours. Snow piling on my shoulders. Eyes stinging. Then I turned back. When I opened the door, he was still there, same place. Same look, like he knew I would return. "Do we pretend it didn't happen?" I asked. His voice was steady. "Only if you want to." I didn't answer. I didn't know yet. But I didn't walk away either. We didn't speak about that night again. Not directly, not with words. But everything shifted. The air between us, once cold and neutral, was now thick with something unsaid. Logan no longer avoided me in the hall. He lingered, watched. Sometimes he'd brush past me in the kitchen and let his fingers graze mine, not by accident. And I let him. Back at home, the routine returned, on the surface. At least, the same house, The same rooms, the same quiet breakfasts, but the silence wasn't empty anymore. It hummed with memory, with questions neither of us dared ask. Late at night, I'd pass his door and pause, wondering if he was awake, if he was thinking of me the way I thought of him. I stopped looking at myself the same way. I caught glimpses in the mirror of softness. Yes, but strength too. Desire, not just for him, but for a version of myself I'd thought was gone. Paul called one afternoon, said he wanted Logan to visit for a few weeks. I agreed, told Logan he should go. He looked at me like I was handing him something fragile. "Will you be okay?" he asked. I forced a smile, of course. But when he left, the house felt hollow again, not because he was gone. Because he'd taken something with him. Something I didn't know how to ask for back. It's been weeks since the retreat, but I still see it when I close my eyes, the snow falling outside. The glow of the firelight, the weight of his gaze on my skin. Nothing happened, and yet, everything did. I didn't touch him, he didn't kiss me, but a line was crossed the moment I let myself be seen. Not just through his lens, but through his heart, and I didn't stop him. Maybe that makes me weak. Maybe that makes me selfish. But for a few fleeting hours, I wasn't someone's leftover. I wasn't the woman forgotten after divorce. I was alive, desired, real. And yes, it confuses me. I still catch myself replaying his words, "You've been invisible too long." And I wonder, was he wrong? Because the truth is, I didn't just want to be seen. I wanted to be chosen. We haven't talked about it since he left for his father's. He texts me sometimes, sends photos, mountains, lakes, skies full of stars, but never of me, not anymore. And maybe that's for the best. Or maybe it's just safer that way. And maybe that's for the best. Or maybe it's just easier than wanting something I can't have. But if he walked through that door right now, and looked at me like he did that night, would I still call it wrong, if it made me feel alive again?